Oh, thank you for that great intro to the My Warp Life podcast, episode number 3. Here we are, Tony. Hello, Tony, with my co-host,
Kevin,
Tony Aradia.
what's up, buddy? I'm here.
And we are recording, and we are semi-sponsored by Guinness since
We're hopeful.
1759.
We're damn hopeful.
We're damn hopeful that me and you are celebrating St. Patrick's Day today, recording these episodes. So today's episode is dedicated to breast cancer survivors.
That's right.
And the title of this episode, Tony, is The Women of 91.
Different time. It doesn't feel like a different time because we're old.
Well, no, it was
for us, it was only yesterday.
It was a time for me where, I was invited to be part of the first production team of Lollapalooza in 1991. Right. And our guest on this episode will be Tana Douglas, who I met prior to 1991. And we're going to be talking about her book, Loud, and she was the first woman roadie. And I've invited Lisa Brownlee, who I met in 1991, who worked with me for the past 25 years and more. And now she'll be making an announcement about her the punk rock museum that will be being built in Las Vegas.
Vegas, yeah.
And then a nonprofit that, is dear to my heart and a dear friend, Shaney Darden with Keep Abreast. So it's going to be a fun episode. Usually my friends and Court, you don't like to have them in the same sentence, but
yes,
we're going to be talking about her and her going all the way to Supreme Court with what she believes in.
So you talk about 1991, and for my side of the industry that I was in, which was a little different kind of touring.
What side were you in?
Broadway touring! National tours, but, there were virtually no women stage managers that I experienced at any time, or roadies or crew. I mean, that changed later in my career. It started at Pat Lowe with someone who was a stage manager. Still now, she's amazing. But it was a different time. What was your experience?
Absolutely. I mean, our touring crew on Lollapalooza, 99% male, but someone will, we'll talk about that, where Tana felt that there was actually starting to have a breakthrough in 1991. Where we actually had some people on that tour in the production team that were female. And we're going to talk about that progression and how, more and more positions. It's not just back of house. It's, riggers and stage people. And but these are some fabulous stories. Before we get started, if you like us, just follow us on Instagram, My Warp Life. We've got our website coming up. We're going to have some merchandise. We've got all kinds of fun stuff. It's really been fun, these episodes, and we're lining up a lot of great episodes in the future.
Yeah, they're going to get really cool. We've got some really amazing guests coming up.
So, I mean, really where I would like to, we should probably, jump into this first little segment here, just to get everyone a feel of, about, hiring, how some of these strong women broke down the barriers of the business.
Well, it must have been a whole lifestyle change, and it's different than what many people are used to.
We got the whole production office on Warp Tour was female at one point.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, to say you're a pioneer in that, in rock and roll, to have that is not out of line in any way.
Well, people will ask me what your legacy is. And I do say when I walk backstage at any festival in the country or go to a lot of tours and meet women who started out somewhere on our tour, whether they were working for a band, they're working with sponsors, working in the production office. And that's what your legacy will end up being, that you kind of helped open the doors, but they had to prove themselves.
You said you worked with Lisa for 25 years. Who is she and how did she start?
Well, Lisa Brownlee is one of those people that is just a hard worker, takes on the challenges. I first met her on Lollapalooza because she was out there on the road working with this product called Smart Drink. It was like the original energy drink. We always have sponsors on tours now. You have all these energy drinks, but they were actually mixing it by hand. And I went out there many times and they were just covered in this stuff, and she'd give me a drink and we would talk. And I started to realize that, the touring world was, even at that point, I could see that there were second-class citizens. You had the people that were working on the stage and backstage, but you had these people that were, I guess, for lack of a better, the front of house and vendors and things, and these people couldn't even get a shower.
Yikes.
That's why I'm very compassionate for people on the Warped Tour, because I remember being separated by class, really, by being on those kind of tours. And you were doing just as much work as everybody else. You might not have been a performer, yet you didn't get the same basic privileges like getting a shower, right? And that's kind of where you bridge that gap.
No, it's the subsequent stories that I hear as the Warped Tour goes on. It's interesting to hear that, and you dealt with her 25 years and before with Lollapalooza. The idea that there's this social economic gap between the haves and the have-nots. It's very rock and roll. But as the Warped Tour goes on, and I hear other people talk about the tour later on, that is absolutely the polar opposites of what it turned out to be.
No, absolutely. For me, it was about making everyone, because to me, every person involved in the tour, you needed them. You needed all the components to make it all work the right way. It was very interesting. A lot of times we talk, in the industry about people wanting to get into the industry, and they have a set thing they want to do. They're like, I want to do this.
I want to be a rock star.
You want to be a rock star. But you became a dancer first. I don't know how that was going to lead to you to being a rock star, unless they fell off the stage and you jumped on the mic.
Pretty good rock stars that can dance.
So, it's one of those things we try to stress. Now, when I work with students or young people, I'm like, you get your foot in the door any way you can. And this, let's hear how Lisa got in.
There wasn't necessarily a place for me, but we had a long-term friendship, and I knew that you knew I was gonna hustle, and you found a place for me. Now, I would like to preface this by saying that I have a horrible memory, so I could be chronologically wrong, but I believe my first position and role was selling the Warped Tour compilation. So vending again, that was the first year that we ever had the Warped Tour compilation. And I had a booth, right? I had to set up the booth every day. And previously, Side One Dummy and you got all these bands that were on the tour to do a compilation. And then I was there like mixed in with the labels, label tents, and like selling our compilation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. And then the interesting to me was that I think maybe the second year when I contacted you about working with a certain company. Do you remember that company?
Oh, yeah, that was Spawn, Todd McFarlane, Spawn Comics. Was it Spawn?
Yeah, it was Spawn Comics. And, it was interesting because I remember calling you and you're like, what the hell? I have no idea what Spawn Comics was.
Yeah. Todd McFarlane, yeah. That turned out to be a really wonderful, super cool, right? I just wanted to be there by any means necessary. I didn't care what you told me to do, right? Like if you go sell these drinks again, I would have done that.
And being at the Warped Tour in the last years, the vending booths and the tents, there's a sea of them. They go on and on forever. And so you have to imagine that all of those booths have 2 or 3 people that stick on the tour. It's a whole culture.
And many of those people, that's their first job in the business.
Right.
And that was the thing with Lisa, why she has gone so far in the business, not went so far, how she has gone so far, is that she's just willing to say, I'm in. I'm willing to try it.
My first memory of that was we were on the dial-up. We were back on the AOL dial-up days. And I remember I would say to you, do you want me to go set up your computer in the office? And you would go, yeah, so I'd come over to where I'd break down whatever I was doing. I'd come to you and I would get your old school computer bag and go into the production office and kind of wiggle my way in through all those folks and go, Kevin wants me to set up his computer. And I still to this day say to people, I'm a area code Rain Man because I knew every dial-up number, area code before from the days when we had to go through that process, right? So I started doing that, and then we used to get pizzas every day. So I'd deliver the pizzas for the buses, put up the bus call signs, whatever I could do to participate in the bigger picture.
So many people, Tony. It's interesting in our business. When they come into the business, they do their job well, but they don't step in, and that's what I always look for. People that were willing to jump in at any time. Even the bands, we'd have something delivered to the production office. I mean, we're talking like a UPS or FedEx truck comes in, and they're delivering 100 packages, like every day. And I would run out, I would go start helping unload the truck guy. You could let him do it by himself, but that would, it's 100 degrees out there. And then you would just start noticing, Like people might be walking to catering, or they might be just going to the bathroom. The ones who would just come over and say, "Can I help?" And it's simple in life. Those simple little lessons can start to really reflect. And you really started to see that with Lisa.
Well, see, the other side of that, too, is that what is going on in the back of your mind for all those people that kind of duck out and say, I got to go to the bathroom or I'm out of here?
Well, I related to the grocery store when I went yesterday, and
we all know who you are, people.
And the woman in front of me had a bag of frozen hamburgers, and she just left them on the shelf. You know how people leave stuff they don't want? But it wasn't like a candy bar, a bag of chips. She put a whole fucking bag of frozen hamburgers up there. And I just looked at her and the checker, who I kind of know, through there. And we just looked at each other and I just go, well, that's a sign of someone I would never hire.
Yeah, these are the people that are on tour the first week, maybe the first week and a half, but eventually they're
gonna go. So, Lisa was a hard worker. There's some of these things she did.
I think what I did is I saw a need to fill a hole, and that was taking care of the bus drivers, right? So as this tour exponentially grew bigger, we had more and more bus drivers, and bus drivers are so pivotal in our day-to-day lives. And because I would be one of the first people they would see in the morning, they would call me Mama Duck, and they'd all start following me around everywhere. Hey, Mama Duck, do you know where this is? And Mama Duck, do you know where that is? So I said to you, I think I remember proposing to you, why don't I become part of the production office, and I'll take care of the bus drivers. I'll do all of their receipts. I'll drive them to go. I'll ride in the runner van to check them in their hotels. I'll make sure they get meals. I'll whatever that is. So I created my own job with you, which was, take care of the bus drivers. And it became a really important part of what that was as time moved on. But that was my first entryway into the production office was, I'll take care of the bus drivers. And that therefore put me in touch with whoever was doing accounting, because I had to reconcile receipts with them. So I just proved myself to be a bigger asset. And that was something I created on my own. It wasn't a job, but I knew I could make it a job.
The thing is, Warped Tour, when you worked on that, it was a great showcase for yourself. And some people crash and burn. If you didn't do a good job out there, it wasn't like you were just seen as that band that you didn't do a good job for them. It reflected across 800 people and this community. But if you were good, it could lead to a lot of great things. And for Lisa, it has.
I was out with Sleeping with Sirens in Paris and Falling in Reverse. But typically my preference, if I'm given a choice, is I like to do shrunk down versions of Warped Tour. I like to tour manage tour managers, right? So I like to get on a festival, and you started many of those festivals, from the country ones to Taste of Chaos to a variety of different things. And I therefore fell into position to tour manage the club version of the Warped Tour, the indoor version of that. And my preference was to tour manage tour managers. So I'd go out and oversee the festival. So I did AP Tour and Taste of Chaos and Avalanche and a variety of those type of tours that were bands that were Warped Tour bands.
I'm not even aware of that. The indoor Warped Tour, what was that?
Well, that was Taste of Chaos. This was about 2005. We saw this kind of niche of artists. We're talking right with the Used and My Chemical Romance, and kind of, I guess you would call it almost the emo phase, kind of real pop emo phase. And we saw that there was this hole, and it was blowing up. And it was this moment in time, too, that there was going to be a hockey strike, and the arenas were going to be empty. So we kind of proposed that we would bring this tour with the Used, Kill Switch Engage, a little heavier. My Chemical Romance was just blowing up. Senses Fail. We put this nice package of bands together, and we made deals with kind of the arenas that we wouldn't, it was a very fair deal, because they go like, you guys want to play arenas with these club bands? And it was similar to the 1991 Lollapalooza, when we surprised everyone that sold out amphitheaters. Right. We sold out arenas, which actually led to this crazy show. It was the largest capacity ever in the modern era that was put into Long Beach Arena. We convinced them. It was a really strange show, because we sold all the seats behind the stage, even though we weren't in the round, and called it the Chaos Zone. and sold it for $15, and we set the world record or the record for that arena at that show. But it was a great time, and it was the indoor Warped Tour, and that one we actually got to do 19, 20 countries with.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really? And how many women would you say were involved as opposed to at that same time when that started? Did at every turn you try to fill every position you could based on relationship, or were you consciously thinking we should have more female representation?
No, that was, by then we were just rolling with our production team. You know, we had a great production.
But you had all these women in your production team.
And they would come with us. They'd, the ones we didn't, that was a smaller crew because it was like 6 or 8 bands in arena. But the core team would travel with us on that, And then, we had this wonderful tour of Australia. Like we were playing in Australia with Taste of Chaos. But, want to go back a little bit farther at this point because I want to bring on a friend, and her name is Tana Douglas, and she is credited with being the first woman roadie. And it was funny because Sabrina was reading a magazine she gets from Australia, and she said, "Dad, there's a story on the first woman roadie." And I said, "Oh, I want to read that." And she said, "But she said she worked on Lollapalooza. Maybe you know her." And she said, Tana Douglas. And I go, "I know Tana Douglas. The first woman roadie, where did you come from and how did that happen?"
It's a double-edged sword. It makes me feel really old. Well, I was in Australia and I'd had a bit of a dodgy childhood. So, we were packing up and moving frequently, constantly, all the time. So I didn't have any solid roots and didn't really have a family unit per se. And so I took off from home at a very early age. I just turned 15 and I decided I'd had enough. And I went off to a festival that was happening in New South Wales at Nimbin. And from there, I just kept going. I never went back.
I mean, she just ran away with the circus.
Right.
And
but when she ran away with the circus, she was just following the event. I wonder what led her to actually get the gig and have to carry. I mean, I don't know. If you've seen roadies, they're strong and they have to carry a lot of weight.
Well, I think at that point, it was, she went out, she showed that she could, cut it. At that point, you did have to, there was no, you did have to carry stuff. You did where, it was a physical job.
Right.
Even to this day, I just remember when I was starting to, load the first PAs and things I worked on, they were heavy. The sound boxes were like 200, 300 pounds, and you'd have 4 people struggling them to get them overhead. It's gotten a lot where technology's really helped a lot to be able to make, to balance that out. And of course, technology has opened up many more markets and many more jobs out on the road. But one of the things that I thought was funny, she mentioned a city called Nimbin, and it would be wrong for me not to mention Nimbin, how that fell into my career at one point. We were on tour in Australia, and Nimbin is a town outside of Byron Bay. And we were down in Byron Bay, and that's, we're hanging out in Byron Bay, and a band called the Real Big Fish went up into the hills in Nimbin because Nimbin is a town where time forgot and laws forgot, still to this day. So Tana got her start up in Nimbin, and I think we have a little clip on that.
Nimbin started as Australia's answer to We Never Got to Go to Woodstock. And it was put on by a bunch of university students, actually. And it was done through the council. The council sponsored parts of it, including Philippe Petit, who's a French tightrope walker. And they sponsored him to come over and put on performances there each night or, as often as he could. And there were, different bands playing. I mean, it was nothing like Woodstock, really. It was more like the outskirts of Woodstock, very hippie. It was a rundown town. It was on its last legs. It had been a lumber town, and it was far enough away from major cities that the students were smart enough to figure out they could get away with pretty much anything there. Whereas if they did it in a city, they'd get shut down probably. So it started this whole cultural thing, and it's still going to this day.
Philippe Petit?
Yeah.
That was the dude that did the skyscraper, right?
Absolutely. He walked between the Twin Towers.
The Twin Towers. You always see those pictures in black and white.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was from that town?
No, she ran away with him. He was brought over.
Well, he was nuts, so...
Yeah, he was brought over as a cultural exchange with, France.
Right.
And that's where they met. And they went down and did a tightrope walk in a certain spot in Sydney Harbor, a very, very famous spot. Australia, we all think it's like, koala bears and Fosters.
It is, Kevin.
But, it's not, because it was interesting.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I don't know if you've
I've
ever
seen that Disney movie.
And there's a little location that Tana reminded me of somewhere in Australia that was a little bit different.
I ended up going down to Sydney with Philippe Petit, and he's the guy who walked between the Twin Towers, by the way, if no one knows who he is.
Wow.
That's the same guy. And this was the walk he did before he did the Twin Towers. So what he did was, which was illegal and not sponsored by the Australian government, was to rig a steel cable between the towers of the Sydney Harbour Bridge and walk between those. So it was like a commando thing. So I went down to Sydney with them for that, and that was my first taste of Sydney. And so, a few other things happened, but I eventually went back to Sydney and got to see the other side of the bridge, which was where the King's Cross is, and, the whole music scene and all that sort of stuff. So that's how I got into the music scene, was by getting brought down there.
Yeah, and King's Cross, for those listeners, and we've got a lot of people that probably have never been there, was like the hub of music. I guess in the United States, that would have been compared to the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles, maybe, that kind of vibe, or maybe the Haight in San Francisco, the Haight or something like that.
With a very strong red light district attached to it.
Yes.
And gangsters and stuff.
Yeah, if you ever want to read, there's some great books about the Cross. It's some amazing stuff. A guy named Chopper came out of that whole scene in King's Cross.
Absolutely.
I was fascinated about his stories. You know?
There's a story in my book, Loud, that talks about how I had to get out of the cross and it was dangerous and all sorts of stuff. So it gives you a glimpse of what it was like there in the 70s.
At this moment, I do, since we're touching on Australia, I do want to pay my respect a little bit to someone we just lost from the music industry. His name is Michael Gadinski, and he just passed away. But he really was the person, him and Michael Chugg and a few other people in Australia, that actually modernized the touring industry, the music industry in Australia. And we just lost him recently. So I think this is a moment I want to pay respects to Michael Gadinski. He was a legend of our business that we lost just recently. Then I had to ask Tana, because around in those late 80s, early 90s, it seemed like every person I was working with was from a certain country.
Now, I think Australians gravitate to LA because of the climate, and it's a music industry, center as well. So, I mean, a lot of Australians go to England first, as I did, and it's just too damn cold. We're not used to it.
That's always been a question, though, I've always had, Tony, is like, if I was like running England at that point, and I had all these people that I had it like prisoners, and we knew this place in Australia, why would I take all my prisoners and put them in Australia with the climate, and then
it's pretty far away,
and then stay in England? Like, the weather sucks. Like, being on tour in England is like gray usually and cold. And you go to Australia, and we're going to Bondi Beach. We're going, we're over in Perth. We're going to Rottnest Island. It's like surfing and camping, and we'll have this whole thing. We have an episode on camping across Australia on tour. But I've always wondered that really well, So, the cool thing about this is, the way I found out this is Tana actually has a book coming out. And I'd like to be able to talk about the book. So Tana's going to tell us about the book, and we'll talk about how we can get it.
The name of the book is Loud, aptly enough, Loud. And it's basically my story from starting off as, at first a runaway child, and then becoming a female roadie, and then traveling overseas, and then just keeping going, and going for decades. And, different countries. I was in England for a while. I was in Europe for a while. I was in the States. Then I went back to Australia. So it's well-traveled, tons of different bands, tons of different stories. And anyone who's lived a life on the road, I'm sure will get a kick out of it.
The nice thing is that so much of our industry is run by brains now versus brawn. Technology has caught up. You don't have to be able to lift that corner of that 200-pound speaker or that 300-pound speaker. It's not, there's, so much technology that the business is kind of balanced out. And now that there's so many people, you're going to hire the best person, and the best person that can do the job, male, female. It's pretty equal. And you'll see on our sound crews now that when I first toured, there was really, there was Dave Ratt's wife, Carrie, at that point, Carrie Ratt, and she was like one of the first people doing sound, but then her daughter was one of my crew chiefs out on Warp. So it was cool that a second generation came in and she became a crew chief for one of our stages. And we had quite a few, women on that side you wouldn't expect sometimes, out on the stages, doing that side of the business.
As a female, you have to know, there's parameters, there's things that people expect, whether you're a male or a female. So, I try to let them know these things. It's like I stress to them that it's really important how they fit in as a member of a crew, not how they stand out as a female. And I think that's a really important thing because, we're dependent on each other as crew members. It's a very, it's the basic core of the whole tour is that you can rely on your other crew members.
I mean, you go to industry events like NAMM, and you can't help but notice the male dominance throughout our industry. I mean, there's no getting around it. And I still think that there's probably a lot of that double standard in many ways.
I think in our world, you've got companies like AEG now. You walk into Golden Voice and that, and it's Paul Tollett has really and Rick Mueller and those people, and you recruit, and now there's this movement for diversity in our industry. We need to diversify the industry, which is important, but it doesn't happen overnight.
For the Latin people.
But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes commitment from the artist. It takes artists. You just don't all of a sudden, and commitment usually means committing dollars. So if that means opening up extra bus spots to bring and train people and give them that kind of training, it's always that question we have for everyone. How do you balance life on the road? But that could even come into a different play, when you ask maybe a female that's taken this path in life.
Well, a lot of it has to do with just touring, the gruel of touring and how it affects your life. And I did it for a short period of time. You did it for how many? 25 years? I mean, it affects your life and how you live it and what the outcome is.
Well, I learned how to control my touring, Tony. I did Warped Tour, and I knew exactly the 2 months each year I would be out.
Right.
When I was working for bands, you're kind of at the whim of that band. For a while there, when I was working with Nine Inch Nails and Stone Temple Pilots and Perry Farrell, you're at the whim of that, what that artist decides to do.
Right.
If they need to go do something, or if you kind of have to drop everything to go to be part of the crew.
But at a certain level, if you're traveling with a big event like this, and this is your livelihood, then you're at the whim of your next mortgage payment. I mean, you got to get out there and earn.
If you're working for a tour, absolutely. You have to go work when there's work.
Right.
I was able to say the road life wasn't going to be for me. 10, 11 months a year was not going to be the road life. That would have been my life. So for me to stay in the business, I would have probably been able to continue working with Golden Voice, doing a local production manager, things I was doing already. But when I started to get out on the road more and I was actually going out and working with bands, I had to make that decision at that point that, wait a second, you wouldn't be able to have you wouldn't be able to balance it. Yeah. And to do that, there's that moment in time when you commit to it. And Lisa, made that commitment. So let's hear from Lisa what she had to say about this.
Never once have I ever questioned it. I threw all caution to the wind. I knew me, Lisa Brownlee, never wanted to have children, never wanted to be married, never wanted to be a homeowner. I just wanted to live my life on tour. And like you said, Warped Tour was a small portion of the year, right? So that was a jumping board for me to go off and do all the other things I did. And I went from smart drinks at Lollapalooza to 10 months out of the year, I was busy. I had to actually create some boundaries for myself and say no to some things because I had to have some semblance of a life, right? I have an apartment in New York I pay rent for, and I had to have a little bit of a life. So it became a choice for me as opposed to like desperation looking for work.
Being on a tour 10 months out of the year after year, this is your social network. These are your relationships that help you get the next job and the next job. It wasn't like she could go and get a job at,
I know,
Chase
but that's what becomes your kind of touring family.
I think a hard lesson I've learned is that you creating boundaries for yourself and balancing life, right? I mean, I could probably say I haven't had any successful interpersonal relationships with anybody since I don't know when, because I'm always on the road. I've missed countless amount of things from you were with me, and something that sticks with me to this day is my mother passed away while we were on work tour, and that was extremely traumatic to me, and I just felt so thankful that I was around my secondary family when that happened. So the life lessons are, you can commit yourself to this as much as you want, but you're gonna have to balance what it is that you're missing to do that.
Yeah, it was very sad because, I got close to your family in some ways because there was only a couple days that people got dressing rooms on Warped Tour.
Yeah.
And one of those days was when, and I affectionately called them the clan of the Brownlee Bears, would come down to Warped Tour. We'd be in South Florida, and you would set up a lovely day for them. So I think, if anything, I know your mother was very proud of you, and your family was very proud of you. And every time they would come down to the show, it was fun for me to get to watch them grow each year and see. But I know that they were always extremely, proud of what you were doing and some of the adventures and the stories you had. So, they were very, and I remember when we lost your mother, and it was tough. And you did, like you said, you have your people around you and your family. They pull together, and that's the road family.
That's the road family. You know what happened after that too is I realized I live alone in New York City. I can go home after, I took some time off and went and dealt with what I had to deal, or I can go home in New York City and be alone. Or I can go back to the Warped Tour and be surrounded by people who love me and people who will support me and people who will engage me. I mean, I remember you took me fishing the very first day that I came back to Warped Tour after my mom had passed. And I thought to myself, this is the most thankful thing that I have about my Warp life. Like, I can just go through something extremely traumatic and something very painful, yet I can come back to my work environment and be surrounded by lifelong friends and people who, if I say, hey, you know what, thank you for your condolences, but I want to move forward and I want to engage in work, and everybody respects that. And I was able to, for me, that was the process I needed to do. And I was very happy and thankful to come back to my warped life and move forward from there.
When you start in this business, you give up a lot. Like I said, my daughter, Sierra, never celebrated her birthday on the actual day. Her birthday could range anywhere from the 1st of May until August 28th. Like, whenever we could find a day to celebrate it. So the first day she actually had a actual birthday party, the day of her birthday, was when she came on the road, when she actually came on the road. And each year that became like, a highlight for her. And, it got a little expensive because they'd come, Kevin, we got to buy a birthday cake for this person. And you think you got 600 or 800 people on the road. There's a birthday every day. So it's like we had to have a special budget for birthday cakes. It was kind of crazy. You have to kind of it's those road stories that can only happen on the road. And each of us have, and it's come up in this thing, our stories are our stories, and your story might be different than my story. And we might have been in the same room. But this is a funny story that Lisa brought up during our discussion that I thought would be kind of fun to hear.
I always remember our day off in North Carolina where they didn't realize they booked us, and we were in the same hotel. It's like a Christian, I don't know what it was. And everybody came in and they're like looking Warped Tour-y, and we got kicked out of that hotel. We had nowhere to go. So we just took over the entire town, parking everywhere. And they had all you can drinks.
Yeah, $5, all you could drink.
People had like hats with the boobies, with the straws, with all the whole thing. And we took over this town. And at the end, I was almost arrested because the cops followed us all back to our buses, and they go, put the drink down, pick the drink up, put the drink down. It was a whole.
Well, that day I remember most of the tour got kicked out of the hotel, and yep, you're right, $5 all you can drink. But I looked and said, when I saw $5 all you can drink, I said, I'm going to wait on the bus for the police.
Mm-hmm.
It's Wrightsville Beach, which is a kind of a beach town. I got a nice resort, the Shell Beach Resort. I've actually gone back there on my own just to go, I wanted to see what it looked like since I'd paid for it, but we were literally kicked out. like
Well, there was
kicked out before we would
people from a Warped Tour
no,
parking
no,
in
no, at that point it was
indiscriminately?
just more like a production. It was like a group, maybe 150, 200 of us.
A lot of people.
Well, this is where the rule came. No one goes into the hotel lobby until Lisa or myself or whoever was assigned to check us in. So our bus comes up a little bit late. We're already being kicked out because this is like guys are in there with their pants down below their ass and their boxers up, no shirts, fucked up tattoos. Like we're talking bad tattoos. Like Warped Tour could have like a museum of bad tattoos.
Right.
And they're throwing them out. I'm like, what? And they're going, you can't stay here because we have like the Organization of the Southern Baptist Ministers Association here. And like the bad guys are talking to their daughters already.
I'm assuming they've already hit up the $5 all you can drink.
No.
bar.
No. The $5 bar was in town. So literally all we did was pull our bus. Like I talked the guy into letting the bus drivers get some sleep there. We pulled the buses down into the city. It was just a, like a half mile down, typical old beach town, kind of fun town. And then I see the sign and it starts spreading. $5 all you can drink. And I'm like, from 5 o'clock on or something. And I'm like, I literally, they're like, Kevin, are you coming? Are you coming? And I go, nope, I'm going to go sit on the bus and wait for the cops. So literally, I'm sitting in the bus. And of course, I see the lights coming. It didn't take very long.
How did they know to find you
Well,
on the
they
bus?
followed these people back because there was some.
They had to sleep somewhere, right? Were they going to the buses to sleep?
Everyone's going on the bus. We're leaving. We have to get to the next show.
town.
We have to get down to Jacksonville. So it's like bus call, 10 o'clock. We have to leave. Our lights are set. I got off the bus. Now,
And as the
Lisa.
throngs of bad tattoos and pants around their ankles stumbling back to the
Now,
bus.
Lisa. Now,
slowly
because
followed by the cops.
they had some problem with the locals. That would be expected down there,
Really? That's weird.
And then, but the cops come back, and Lisa's got a drink with her, and all I see is the cop with a flashlight on her going, put the drink down, pick the drink up, put the drink down. She's going like back and forth like this, trying to do it. And he's going, look, if you do the wrong thing next, I'm going to take you to jail. I'm like, please. She's like I'll take custody. Like I'm there. But here's what you got to do. Like, if there was a problem and anyone caused any problems on this tour, let's have a lineup. So they lined up like 100 people on the wall. They brought the people from the bar and they picked out some people. They line them all up. They take them away. And it was members of Hatebreed, this band, Hatebreed. And there were some members of this bicycle team that we used. And, it was kind of like, so we leave because we have to go. About 2 miles down the road, 3 miles down the road, I start hearing radio chatter, and pull over the bus. And we're having problems on bus. They want us to turn around to go bust their friends out of jail. So we pull into a gas station.
Well, when you say bust their friends out of jail, you mean bail their friends?
Bust their friends out. They were like,
Jesus.
it's a small town. We could get our friends out.
Oh, sure. We'll just ransack the place.
You got to realize, I've been at $5 all you can drink. You get a lot of courage, man. So I get off. By the time our bus comes up, there's a guy named Jerome Crooks and a guy named Stuart Teagat, rest his soul. Stuart was badass. Stuart was this badass that he had girlfriends' names, and when they break up, he'd tattoo Void over their names. Literally had Void over Tanya, Void, Desiree, Void. The guy was, straight up, but he was loyal, man. Loved Stuart, the best guy in the world. He did a bunch of time in jail. So, he was that loyal guy. You gave him a job. But now he's pissed because there's disruption in the camp. Right. So I'm trying to get off the bus. They're running. And by the time I get to the bus, Stuart's running through this bus, just knocking band members, Hatebreed's other band members.
Really?
Knocking them out. Jerome, I've never seen him so mad, but he's grabbing him and dragging him off the bus. So by this point, I'm catching up. My bus comes up, I'm running over there. And then all of a sudden, more cops start showing up.
So this is just trouble on the bus because he wants to get off to go get his friends.
They want the bus to turn around and go back to Wrightsville Beach.
I see.
So by then they're throwing them off. So now I'm and now the more cops are coming. Now we're out in fucking.
Well, he's going to get exactly what he wants. Now he's going to get right to the jail.
Yeah, but no, we're in a different zone.
Different town.
This is down the road. This is this is deliverance country. This is serious backwoods.
You're going to litter the whole backwoods with people in jail.
So we come up, and then I'm pissed. So I don't know what to do. I'm mad at these guys. So they had little bikes, BMX bikes. It wasn't motorcycles. So I'm like, F these guys. They're off the tour. So I run on my bus, grab a few $100 and literally threw the money at him and said, you can pedal home. Now, realizing we're in North Carolina, these guys were from Portland, Oregon. So we're dragging their crap off in the middle of the street. We're throwing it all around. The cops come up. He walks up to me, goes, who's in charge? Of course, I have to go, I'm in charge.
I'm in charge. Great.
And then he goes, well, what's going on? He goes, it looks like you're having a little bit of a family disturbance.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, a little bit of a family disturbance. We had a little, these guys. He goes, all right, everyone else on the bus, these 4, stay here. And the last I saw of these guys ever in my life was our buses driving off with these guys 4 spread eagle on the front of a
cop car.
Cop
Did you
car.
at least leave their bikes with them?
Oh, yeah, we dragged them off, left them with some bikes. I think we grabbed their luggage, threw them out, went on, did a show, never heard from them again.
Maybe we can interview them.
I like to find, yeah. I bet they have some good stories about that, trying to get home with $100 in their pockets. But, we always did lead into these things sometimes. And there was moments in time where, like I said, some things will come out that, happened to me at this point.
I always tell this is a really funny story too. We were going to the Canadian border. We'd been having a great time in Warped Tour, wherever we were before we took off for the Canadian border. So we decided, is this the same one where we brought everyone on the bus? Is this the same?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we decided to have, Kevin. Kevin was good at this. I wasn't good at this because I didn't want everybody on the bus, but Kevin loves to invite people for the sleepover on the bus one, which was never sleepover. It was just like, woo! So we had, who did we have? I think we had Dickie. We had
Billy Joe.
We
Fat
had
Mike, I think.
Fat Mike, maybe Fat Mike. I don't remember, but we had a cast of characters, and we had like the horns, and it's New Year's Eve, and everyone is just, I was like, we're going to the Canadian border. And I think at that time I was tour managing One Man Army. Yeah, and One Man Army was on Warped Tour. And I had my briefcase with the money in it on, but I still rode production. I'd say, see you guys over there. So we're rolling through. We had Nurse Laura then, and we're all just raging it up. And then I was like, okay, border's coming soon. I'm gonna go retire because we got to get to the border. Well, I go to sleep, or I try to go to sleep, and then Kevin falls asleep in the front, and everybody starts writing on Kevin. Remember that with the Sharpie?
Oh yeah.
Everyone's writing just the worst stuff you can imagine on Kevin. They're like,
USA sucks.
Yeah, no, fuck Canada. Variety of things. And I'm like, I don't even see this. And I come up and I go, okay, we got to stop. This is horrible. So anyway, the border crossing comes. We get there. And I can just hear bang, bang, bang. The bus driver's like, the border's here. And there's a guy, and he's border patrol, and he's like, who's running this thing? Who's in charge of this? And then Kevin just springs up from the couch, and I could see him springing up, and he's like, that's me. That's me. I'm Kevin. And he's got, I don't know what, Swazi right here, and just fuck Canada, everything, just covered in Sharpie. So I think you set the tone for me getting in all the trouble, actually. Kevin's like, I'm in charge of all these people. So off the bus, everybody off the bus, right? And then everyone's drunk. Laura Sanders is like running to get booze from across the border.
Literally trying to run
Laura Slippy's got like red wine all down her, spilled down. And Dickie and Billy are fighting over like, oh, you're Canadian, eh? Like everyone is just a mess, right? We're just a total mess. And Kevin's got Sharpie. But for some reason, they decided to pick my metal briefcase. And I couldn't remember the combination, right? Because whatever, we've been partying. Like, open up the briefcase. And I'm trying and I can't. And they took me in another room under like some crazy police floodlight. Meanwhile, everybody's out there. And now we're whole thing. I remember what happened to me. All I know is I kept fighting it, going, you're counting this as U.S. equivalent. This is a Canadian equivalent of this money, and it's not $10K. And I don't even know how we got through that border.
Well, we sat there I remember them counting that money over and over again with you.
Yeah.
And then they finally brought a form out. and they made our nurse Laura, who was supposed to take care of all of us, and she was probably the drunkest of everyone. And they said she was going to have to sign this form for us to get us. And there's like 30 buses behind us now. And remember, like everyone held her arm and tried to write her name on this form.
Held her arm to sign the form. That was, I mean, you would never get away with this at that border ever again, like we did. But here I am lecturing everybody before we leave for the border, like, don't fuck this up, you know, like we got a show to do and everybody don't go before us because we got to get through first. And now I'm keeping us stuck at the border for hours, counting this briefcase full of, they even made me pull the lint out of my pocket and put it on the table. They're like, is that just lint or is it coins? But I remember we got back on the bus and what did we do? And we just started partying again. We're like, give us a beer, give us some Canadian beer, and just went on to the show. But that was, that was quite an experience.
One of the biggest things is, you know, stories don't end now that the Warped Tour ends. These people are doing other things, and Tana's doing her thing. And Lisa's doing her thing. So before we leave them, let's see what they're up to.
2 things came my way, but the biggest one is we are launching with the team of people the Punk Rock Museum in Vegas Punk Shop in downtown Las Vegas 2021, 12,000 square feet of memorabilia starting in the early 70s. So I am relocating from New York City to Las Vegas in May to get this thing off of the ground.
Yeah, I Googled that. They even have a Facebook page. They're just ramping up right now, but it's going to be really cool.
Very cool because a lot of people that worked on Warped Tour are part of the team that are building it, including Fat Mike, who's the driving force. Fat Mike from NoFX is the driving force behind the concept and idea, and then Lisa's going to curate it.
Do you know where it's going to be, or they haven't even got real estate yet?
They have the real estate. I don't know exactly where it's at, but we'll announce that when that comes up for sure.
Cool.
And then, you know, I of course, I think it's a great read if you get a chance. So let's find out how we can get this book, Loud, by Tana Douglas.
The e-version's available worldwide. It's just launched in Australia and New Zealand, so it's been out 2 weeks down there. You can get it on any e-platform. It has like 100 different images of different bands and some of myself as well. You can flick by those ones. But there's a playlist that comes with it that also gives you an idea of the content. You know, that's on Spotify. It's called Loud as well. So, you know, you can pick it up anywhere. And there's over here for like the States and Europe and England, there's a company called The Book Depository, thebookdepository.com, and they'll ship you a printed version if you specifically want a printed version.
I was lucky enough to get to do these events, Tony, that we would do in the mountains where we would blend in snowboard, a board across, some skateboarding, some music. And one of those events was Board Aid, which kind of inspired me that day to do this. But another event that I was asked to help out on, and I really enjoyed it, was in Lake Tahoe. It was a thing called Boarding for Breast Cancer, where they were raising money for breast cancer awareness. And our charity of the week is a fantastic organization. And I think you'll really get a chance to get to know her, Shaney Jo Darden. I've known her for many, many years, and we thought it was a good time. And this episode being dedicated to breast cancer survivors, I thought it'd be great for you to get to learn a little bit about Keep Abreast. They're still around and thriving, and you'll learn a little bit more. So let's hear from Shaney.
We started basically with these casts that you'd see behind us. One of our friends, Margaret Kilgallen, who was a painter, and we actually had brought her art out on the Vans Warped Tour as mode art, and we showed her art to all the kids across the country, and she had breast cancer. And then we became friends with the girls from Boarding for Breast Cancer because Mona worked at Transworld Snowboarding magazine, and they invited us to do an exhibit at the Sports and Music Festival. So we said, well, instead of just bringing art, why don't we create something tied to the cause? So we made these breast casts on our friends, on all the athletes, and really just started as a way to help one person keep abreast. And then with the ability to come out on the Vans Warped Tour and create educational information in a cool way, really allowed us to, like you said, grow quickly and become everywhere almost overnight because of the Warped Tour.
I had no idea. So you actually started her on the Warped Tour. They were exhibiting these to help just one person. But her organization is massive. It got very big.
It got very big. And there was it was like, it was going along, and they had this concept because back then, a lot of times the bands would wear rubber bracelets with a cause-based band.
Right.
And she came up with this great term.
I love boobies. So yeah, we came up with, I was living in New York, and I was always thought that I Love New York kind of concept was super cool. And that's when the Lance Armstrong bracelets were, really popular. So we just decided, well, you know what? This is a cool way to get information out to people, but also to raise funds. So we created the I Love Boobies bracelet, and it was wide and bright. And with the Warped Tour, all the bands started wearing the bracelets on stage. They started wearing our t-shirts, which really made that connection. It made all the kids who would see the bands, supporting Keep Abreast, then they would come to our booth and they would get to learn more about prevention and early detection.
A lot of times things fly under the radar. Warped Tour flew under the radar for a long time. No one knew. We just did our thing. Then as it got more and more known, sometimes things happen, as well as what happened with Shaney, with this organization, Keep Abreast, when they came up with this amazing term, I Love Boobies, was, caught on, and the bracelets, and the bands were wearing them, and the fans were picking up these bracelets. I mean, like 1 million of them, people purchased like 1 million of them to support them. It was crazy.
That's great.
But it did lead to a little bit of controversy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the bracelets were banned all over the country. Kids were getting suspended from school. There was even a court case that went all the way to the Supreme Court about the I Love Boobies bracelet.
Both the district court and the circuit court tried to focus on the word boobies. It's not the word. It is the sentence. I love boobies.
How polarized and screwed up is this country?
I mean,
still today, that I went all the way to the Supreme Court because kids were wearing it in school, I imagine.
They were wearing it to school, and they were suspended, and they went to the First Amendment rights, that this is not, and it went up all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court kind of sided on the kids' side.
Of course they did.
They did, and it was appealed, and then they kicked it back, and but to think about that, and
well, I'm hoping that what it did was make a lot of people more aware, and a lot of people buy more for the cause.
Well, there was a cause, and they did these cards that would stay in the showers. It was pretty cool.
Exactly. And the issue is about breast cancer, early detection, and prevention. So getting, young people in the habit of knowing their body and knowing what's normal for them, and also being able to talk to their parents about it. We have many times on the Warped Tour where young people would bring their mom to the booth and be like, hey, Mom, you got to check this out. And then they would come back to us a year later and be like, my mom actually found a lump because they met you the year before.
Wow.
Wouldn't have known that information.
That's awesome. And also another thing, I think I saw her do a TED Talk where she talked about the complete unawareness of how to properly test for breast cancer. And she said something like only 5 to 10% of it was hereditary, that what brings about breast cancer mostly is just environmental situations and stuff that's bad for you.
Yeah, she did this, diversified into this whole organization, Non-Toxic Revolution.
Right.
To awareness of chemicals in our environment. And, she's making people aware through then. I mean, Shaney has that, she has that energy. And, I was asking her what she's been up to now, because they were such a face-to-face company and, with everything going on.
Yeah, I mean, we have several programs that are about education and also survivor support. One of our main programs is Check Yourself, which is about early detection, and we have an app. So the app is incredible. It's free. It shows you how to do your self-check. It will help you schedule and send you an automatic reminder once a month on the right time, because many people don't know that there is actually a right time to check your breasts. And we have a partnership with a company called Carbon Health. So if you do happen to actually find something, the app will ask you, did you find something? Yes, no, maybe. And if you do find something, you can set up a virtual care appointment with a doctor at Carbon Health within 10 minutes. Wow. So it's really this awesome connection to be able to offer people care on the next step.
From that first moment that she was on the Warped Tour and then things started really steamrolling for her organization, which of course is a nonprofit. It's amazing. Where is she now? What is she doing now?
I had this great person working for me for a couple of years. Her name was Melanie Pierce. And Melanie had also worked with Keep Abreast. So when she came over to us, she'd been working on this project. And you know, though we didn't get to have it this year, it's a very cool project. So let's see what Shaney's doing on, you know, outside of some of the other projects and doing this one with Melanie Pierce.
The biggest event we do every year is called Brew Bees, which was founded by Melanie Pierce. And we've been doing that for, this year would have been the 12th year. So it's canceled, but it's a pink beer festival. And that event has raised over $500,000 for Keep Abreast in the last 12 years.
I think I saw something they've been doing a long time. Is it like in the Oceanside?
They do it down in Oceanside. They do it up in this Bay Area in Alameda.
Oh, cool.
So they do a few of them. We were trying to expand to a few other markets, but, you know, due to COVID and some of the other issues.
Sure.
And, you know.
But it'll be back. Just
it'll
like
be back,
everything else.
yeah. You know, that's, you know, and that's what we're kind of sitting here right now. You know, we're kind of seeing some optimism, some light at the end of this tunnel, Tony. You know,
optimism and broovies. Let's go.
Yeah. So hopefully it's a super fun event. Hopefully we'll be able to enjoy that sometime next year in 2021-22. So some of you have joined our Patreon and hear the full-length versions of all those interviews. I don't know if you've been able to do that, but they're quite entertaining. There's a lot, you know, we're only grabbing some of the moments, but there's some really funny additional stories. You can also text us any topics you want us to hear at 818-863-6445. That's 818-863-6445.
Please check us out on Instagram and Facebook.
At My Warped Life. Hey, we have a couple letters and notes from some Warped Tour former workers or fans. Janelle Zumowski, and thank you for spelling that out so I could actually come close to it. So thanks for writing in. It said, Lisa Brownlee, she's a superstar in my eyes. If you've had any inspiration as a woman on the road, she'd be it. There was only a handful of times Lisa and I were able to interact, but she ensured everyone was having a stellar time and that everything was going accordingly. As I started young on the tour, she sparked the interest in myself that I could help outside of Warped Tour. Kevin and Lisa truly unknowingly opened up so many opportunities for myself from the 2015 Juno Awards to the Montebello Rock Fest. My heart will flutter once more for a Warped family reunion. We hope to see you again, Janelle, and best of success in your further adventures and career, and we hope to see you down the road. The other person that wrote was Aaron Albertson. I know Aaron. Hi, I worked in the Forfini production office with Kate and the team in 2007 and went on the road in 2008 as a reverse daycare management and then as a label tent manager in 2009. I used to flat iron all the guys' hair in the AM before doors inside of the reverse daycare tent. I had appointments every morning. It's great that people multitasked on that tour, and we call that the gray market. Thank you. Great to hear from you, Aaron. I truly want to thank all the awesome women that I got to work with all these years on the road. You were all fantastic. You all know the list would be too long to thank here individually, but you know who you are, and I hope to see you guys down the road somewhere on some project. But at this point, I guess we need to do all our normal thank yous. I want to thank my co-host, Tony Aratia, my producers, Xavier, Mustard Shorts, Bradley, Vivian Wang, social media by Beata Shumto, and the star of the show, Diego Aratia, who just celebrated his 14th birthday this week. As always, I want to thank Sierra Lyman, Sabrina Lyman, and Fran Lyman. You want to thank anyone, Tony?
No, I want you to tell them to take it away, baby.
Oh, take it away, Diego. Kind of a rule of mine in class or anything I'm doing, when an animal walks into the camera, you have to introduce it. So there's been someone dancing behind you most of this time up on the windowsill. So, yeah, so who is that?
That's Cairo Kitty.